Good morning and welcome to Impact Talk by CSRBOX. This Impact Talk is little different from the usual Impact Talk that we do because we have two eminent personalities from the social sector, I would say social and business sector together, because both of them are linked with both social sector and business sector, which technically is going to drive India's employability and social and philanthropy sector for next few decades. So we have Mr. Ved Mani Tiwari, who is Chief Executive Officer, National Skill Development Corporation, widely known as NSDC in India. And he's also the Managing Director of its wholly owned subsidiary, NSDC International. I'll briefly introduce both of them, but let me first again introduce Mr. Hemant sir. Mr. Hemant Gupta, who is Managing Director at BRTSIF, which is a technology incubator under Bombay Stock Exchange. Both of them have joined us together to talk about one part is about how India's skill ecosystem is evolving and how India is taking the lead in this entire space with more focus on developing nations because India is also an exporter of labor in many countries. Simultaneously, we have seen a buzz happening in India's philanthropy and social sector through social stock exchanges. Entire narrative, which is going to take a new benchmark in philanthropic investment or philanthropic funding across nations, I would say. So both of them are going to talk about these two pertinent points. And I will first go with Ved Mani sir and briefly introduce him to set the context of what we are going to take in next 45 minutes. So Ved sir is currently CEO of NSDC and he's also MD of NSDC International. He has 3 decades of experience of working with government of India and with key industries in the private sector, including infrastructure, energy, urban development, and transportation. He's a strong advocate for using technology solutions for driving successful social impact as well as business operations. Previously, he has served in key managerial positions as Director, Welspun, Global CEO, Sterlite Power, MD, Sun Edition, Director, Ministry of Railways, and Director in Kochi Metro, Chennai Metro, and Nagpur Metro. With his experience across public and private sector and development sectors, he has contributed immensely to developing and executing NSDC's strategy for social sector and skilling across the domains. In his role as the Managing Director of NSDC International, he is setting up a robust partner network for enhancing skill education and employability for India's youth with large nations. So welcome, Ved sir, in this Impact Talk. I will also introduce Hemant sir. Mr. Hemant Gupta is MD of BRTSIF, largely known as a technology incubator under Bombay Stock Exchange. Hemant has served as 26 years in corporate sector, largely working in financial segment, with one of the largest corporate, I would say, in financial segment, City International, where he worked in a wide variety of functions. Then he decided to swap his large corporate role for a more socially relevant and business and social sector convergence with his role with Bombay Stock Exchange. And he largely played a good role, and I would say eminent role in setting up BSE Samman, which was an exchange of ideas and a platform for social sector as well as private sector to work on corporate social responsibility in India. He was also a member of the working committee and technical group constituted by SEBI for setting up social stock exchange entire mechanism in India, I would say. He is currently working as the head of social stock exchange at Bombay Stock Exchange. Hemant holds a management degree from IIM Kolkata and an engineering degree from IIT Madras. So welcome, Mr. Hemant Gupta, to this Impact Talk. I would now move to Ved sir in terms of trying to understand how India's skills ecosystem is evolving and how it ultimately converges and gets some support from the social stock exchange mechanism. Ved sir, NSDC is completing almost 15 years in this July. And we have seen that NSDC has played a crucial role in India's skill ecosystem. And in a way, it has really worked both for social sector and businesses in India. How would you really look at this entire journey of 15 years and how would you like to mention about contribution of NSDC for India as well as creating a strong foundation of new India?
Thank you so much, Mr. Bhomik, for having me here. And very warm good morning to everyone, and especially to Mr. Hemant Gupta, who is spearheading a very innovative thing, probably among the very few initiatives in the world. So welcome, Mr. Gupta, and I'm privileged to be partnering you in this impact talk. So as I traverse the journey of NSDC over last 15 years, I would like to give credit to the founders of the organization who really thought that India, the way the Indian economy was evolving, it needed an agile partnership between government and the private sector to set up ecosystem for vocational education and training in the country, which was not only industrial, because post economic liberalization, India was taking a strong inroads into the service sector. And the first phase of the NSDC, which I'll say the period between 2009 to 2014, was largely in the nature of a developmental finance company, which was helping the entrepreneurs to set up a skill ecosystem, because the functioning financial markets were not available for somebody to foray in vocational education. Post 2014, when the Honorable Prime Minister took over the reins of the country, the skill ecosystem took a very different flight. The Ministry for Skill Development and Entrepreneurship was created. The Skill Mission, India Mission got activated, and NSDC was brought under the Skill Ministry as a key architect of skill ecosystem. And then that this phase from 2014 to I would say during the until pandemic 2020 was mostly working with government and doing lots of structural things in the skill ecosystem. So lots of structural engagements and running the largest skill scheme anywhere in the world. Close to $1 billion scheme was implemented by NSDC. Post pandemic, we realized the world of work is changing, and various inputs that we started receiving made it very clear to us that it's no more about vocational education. It's about everybody who wants to get into world of work and who wants to have a stable and aspiring career in the world of work needs reskilling, upskilling all the time. And that's where we pivoted in 2021, and we started expanding our operations to educational institutions, to global audio partners. So we now position ourselves as a talent partner to businesses on one side, and also as a insight provider to those who are already in the work, or want to enter into the workforce. Over last 1.5 years, we have taken a lot of new initiatives in the realm of financing innovation, in the realm of creating a market for skills, channelizing the philanthropic and corporate social responsibility kind of funding into the sector, because trust was a very important element, and we worked very hard over last 1.5 years to build a trust into the ecosystem. So I stop at that, because as we can progress during our discussions, we'll cover more. I don't want to continue like this, but lots of things are happening. One more thing that before I stop, I want to say that Mr. Hemant Gupta is here. He is incubating technology, but NSDC also has taken lots of steps in digital and technology space, and that has truly transformed the skill ecosystem in India and skill education ecosystem. And I'm very confident that with Mr. Hemant Gupta, we will be together scripting a tech-led skilling story from India, from which the world can learn. Thank you so much.
Okay, thanks a lot, sir. You narrated the journey very well. Now, when we look at current focus of NSDC and what is there in the next 5 years, how would you like to point out things which are very crucial for India's youth, as well as for the industries from the skilling and industries perspective?
So I see two aspects of skills. One is that every individual wants to lead a fulfilling life, and the businesses want to be competitive in the emerging world. So I would like to just put some facts before you, that Our Honorable Prime Minister has launched Amrit Kal for all of us. By 2047, India will be close to $30 trillion economy. If we grow at 6.5%, as various projections say, we'll be a $30 trillion economy. And our per capita income will be close to $20 to $25,000. Now you imagine that from India, there's no doubt that India will become a $30 trillion economy. We'll be perhaps among the top three in the world. And there is also no doubt that will be per capita $20,000. But what is extremely important, that whether we will be an equitable society or like most other societies, will be highly inequitable society. And the great leveler will come only from skills. And that is where we believe that every person has a fundamental right to get skilled, reskilled, upskilled. And that's the narrative that we want to pursue as a fundamental right perspective, that when people want, they should be able to get skilled anytime, anywhere. And when we do this, we make businesses competitive. Indian economy will become competitive if we have a pool of skilled professionals increase. So that is why we believe that there's a need to work very closely with businesses. India is progressive on many fronts. We have a corporate social responsibility, which is probably among very few countries in the world have this kind of a provision. Now the SEBI has come forward, social stock exchange has come, Skill India mission is there. I clearly see a Skill India mission emerging as the most powerful developmental narrative anywhere in the world, because it is giving opportunity both businesses, individuals, and the state to work together. So typically we have been saying that we are a triple P, public-private partnership, but what we are now finding is that it's both public sector, private sector, and people. So these are four P's coming together: public, private, people, and that's the partnership that is emerging in India. And NSDC wants to be at the core of this. We believe that digital is extremely important. New emerging technologies are going to change the world of work dramatically. We recently had under G20, we did a future of work exhibition. We are all talking about how AI is going to change the world. But I'm very confident on one thing, that technology has only made human beings more prosperous and more comfortable in the way we have eliminated many vagaries that our predecessors faced. What we find is that earlier the muscle jobs were replaced by machines, and now AI will probably take over some of the cognitive jobs. But human beings are more than cognition or muscle. We are all about empathy, we are about love, we are about passion, and the need for such jobs will dramatically improve. And we will deploy these things, both machines and the AIs, to enhance our bonds between, we can, as going with our G20 agenda, one earth, one family, one future. We will be definitely, and that is why we say that the skills are more about higher order skills that we want to focus on. And I'm very excited about this journey. And I will once again tell that Mr. Hemant Gupta will contribute a lot to this, because social stock exchange is an innovation which we are looking forward to very eagerly. Then that will be able to channelize the funds for development of the sector, especially the ESG agenda. The way the whole world is becoming conscious of ESG, I think the India is already attracting a lot of venture capital. I'm very confident that India will attract most of the ESG and impact capital because of the work that Mr. Hemant Gupta is leading today.
Okay. Now come to my usual question, which I ask most of the sector leaders. We all know that COVID pandemic has impacted skills ecosystem along with other segments and sectors. What has been key learning for the skilling sector in India after this pandemic or through this pandemic to sustain the positive changes which probably pandemic has given us? And how you are looking at it as an organization, that probably what are the changes which could be sustained and help the skill ecosystem in get a new narrative or new landscape?
We are all very conscious that lots of people lost their lives, and we regret the pain that world went through. And our sympathies and with the families and homages to the people who lost their lives because of this unfortunate situation that the world has to face. But it also brought to the fore the true power of resilience of a human spirit. The way the world came together and the way we fought, remarkable for humanity. And I think that as a society, as one world family, Vasudhaiv Kutumbakam spirit, we have become more steadfast and resilient in our approach, because the way we pivoted ourselves, the nobody ever imagined that the whole world can be put to a lockdown, but the way the people responded to that, and quickly the remote work and the digital and the technologies, they are truly remarkable. When the history will be written, this period will be written as a period where humanity gained a lot. Not with I'm fully conscious of the loss of lives that humanity has faced, but this period will be remembered for that. So, and one more thing that has happened is that the whole very tightly integrated supply chain and the economy of scale theory got very challenged during this period. So what has happened is that the world is uh, becoming local and global simultaneously. So lots of friendshoring and reshoring of the manufacturing is happening. So and the technology is enabling it very fast. So I believe that the what we learned during this period is that the borders will be closed, but the technology will help people to stay connected with each other. So that's the biggest achievement of this period is, and this got demonstrated into education and skill ecosystem. So that is one area where I'm very the adoption of digital would have happened 5 years down the line, but it got accelerated. And the other thing is that the way the logistics and the supply chain got impacted all around the world, it also gave opportunity to for a globalization of wealth actually, because now every country can participate in the economic value chain, and that is another positive that we have. So I would, if I want to pin down that what are the gains which we would like to sustain is that world of work has changed beyond recognition. It has become far more dynamic than one ever imagined. So there's a need to work very closely with businesses. The other thing is that uh, we can only fight together. We cannot fight alone. So the whole world has to come together and work for the prosperity of the world, as is enshrined in our G20 presidency motto. The third thing is that the borders cannot stop people to people contact. And so technology will enable people to work with each other, learn from each other, and that's going to be the legacy that we are going to have. So I would like to rely upon these three things, that learning has become continuous. It's a lifelong learning because the world of work will keep on changing enormously. People to people contact has become more friendly and easier with the technology, and technology is the key to lifelong learning. So and we would like to consolidate these three things. Of course, as I said, the four P's, the partnership between people, public and private, will be the foundation on which this whole new paradigm will be scripted.
Okay. I'll slightly deviate from the discussion that we are having. How does NSDC play a role or help Indian youth who are either working outside India or who are aspiring to work outside India but getting skilled in India? So, what is that role that NSDC is playing, and how this really strengthens confidence of youth that they have an ecosystem support for them to help inside India and outside India?
So if you I was going through a recent report which says that the world will add 1 billion people in workforce in next 25 years. So there'll be a 1 billion incremental workforce addition in the world. 25% of that will come from India. Now imagine that 25% of the incremental global workforce has to come from India. I go back to Y2K crisis that the world faced, and how India upskilled the youth. And today we see that every other day we hear a global CEO of the world's top companies is an Indian. This is all because we took the Y2K crisis in our own stride, and we trained people. Now, a similar situation is emerging all across the globe because of one, the pandemic has changed behaviors on multiple fronts, and the demographic, the way it is changing. So, care jobs are dramatically going up in demand. What we saw in as demand for IT about 20, 30 years ago, the same situation is emerging in care jobs. The other area, the IT and digital, is definitely evolving into a new generation, and the demand is going to be ever higher for that. And the third area, which I see that as I talk to you, that the logistics and the e-commerce is changing across the world. So that is the third area where we see that logistics will attract a lot of global opportunities. The in media entertainment, the way today, if you see, when I say here FM, we only see regional language coming to the fore. That means that the media entertainment has gone, the creativity has gone to the last mile in India. And I'm very sure that in times to come, the Indians are going to rule the entertainment industry across the world. So that is another area that I see. And manufacturing, because the front shoring and reshoring that is happening across these four dimensions. Indians are going to be, because of the demographic advantage that we have, that today our median age is around 28, and China's is around another 10 plus above what we have. So these sectors will be led by our youth, and we are working in that area, that how we bring the global opportunity inside to India, because our people are very innovative. They are very enterprising. If they are exposed to the opportunities that exist, and that's what we are trying to do, that the opportunities are no more local. This is a global, and everybody has an opportunity to participate because of the remote work. You can even participate in the global economy from through offshoring methods. Wherever there is a people to people interfaces required, the mobility will happen. So we're working on all these fronts, and scripting the partnerships with the international employer associations and the large employers abroad. As you know that this area has been largely informal until now, so there is a lot of work to be done from a trust perspective, and bringing the formalization to this. So formalization, and that is why we are working on a digitally verifiable credentials. So the every person who follows the NSDC's path of mobility or participation in the economic opportunities across the globe, we have built a digitally verifiable platform for the credentials of individuals. And that's how we are saying that you can look towards India as your talent partner. So a trusted talent partnership is what we are working with the global employers and employer networks.
Thanks a lot, sir. Thank you. So I will now shift the gear and move to Mr. Hemant Gupta for our understanding and the entire development happening in social stock exchange ecosystem in India. Mr. Hemant, you have been at the cusp of, or I would say, you're at the center of the entire conceptualization, design, and execution of social stock exchange model in India. So, how would you really like to set the context for a layman that how this journey of social stock exchange conceptualization started, and why do we need social stock exchange concept at all, and how does it help the India's social and development sector?
Sure, no, thank you, Bhomik. So a few things to set the context. One is that the social stock exchange is not the first time it's being tried across the world. There are 7 countries that have experimented with it. 3 of them are still ongoing, 4 have not survived. Second is that by and large, I would say 80 to 90% of the social development participation, right, is restricted to large institutions, corporate bodies, and the government. Right? The democratization of social development has not really happened. There are, of course, people who give money for the purposes that they are close to their heart, but really there has not been a widespread formalization of that space. And the third is that from a fundraising perspective, there has not been a platform, a successful platform that would help a for-profit and not-for-profit raise money, right? So those three things, and actually I would add a fourth, which is that especially in the not-for-profit sector, a few bad fish have kind of spoiled the pond and made life tougher for every other player in the social development ecosystem. Okay? So that kind of sets the context for the social stock exchange introduction in India. In 2019, in the budget speech, when Madam Finance Minister introduced it, the idea was to be able to access new pools of capital, bring more people in to the social development ecosystem. However, bring them in a structured manner. So there are when they donate money or invest in a social venture. And therefore, the three things that were critical in setting up the social stock exchange is one, learning from the mistakes that had happened in other countries. Second, ensuring that there was adequate transparency into whatever funds are being routed through the social stock exchange. And three, ensuring that it's as inclusive as possible so that everybody can benefit both from the donor side and from the issuer side, right? So when we went about architecting the social stock exchange moment, we kept these factors in mind, and we also ensured that the conversation. So I'll give you an example. For BSC and for SEBI, the social sector has never been front and center, right? It has never been something that they have factored in when they are creating regulations and notification, right? So, and to their credit, to SEBI's credit, I think they made the whole process very participative. So they ensured that they included people from the social investment community, people from the social NGO community, from the impact investors community, and even people who are responsible for impact measurement, social audits, etc. So the conversation, because the Indian context for social development is very different from most other geographies, right? Given the diversity, the geographical spread, and the multi-dimensional problems, livelihoods being one that NSDC is addressing. So it was very important that we create this social stock exchange, which was relevant to the Indian context, but at the same time learn from what had happened in the other countries. So that kind of was the context for setting up the social stock exchange.
Oh, great. Now, as a new NGO, I would say, who has completed a couple of years, but still not operating at a large scale, or a social enterprise which is creating social impact and a for-profit, how would you try to explain the social stock exchange, that how they can leverage it as an exchange, and how does it benefit them?
Okay, so I'll break this up into three parts, Bhomik. First is that you have to be first eligible to come onto the social stock exchange, right? There are over 7 lakh companies in this country, right?
Yes.
But only 7,000 are listed on the stock exchange. So there is a certain amount of compliance, governance that goes with coming onto the social stock exchange, because you are taking on public money and that involves additional responsibility. So therefore, let me tell you that the eligibility criteria is broken up into two parts. The first is that you have to demonstrate that you're a social enterprise. A social enterprise today does not have a legal definition in this country, right? There are various forms that it takes. So what we did is we went back to first principles. We said that first tell us what areas or what sectors you're working in and whether they are qualify as a social development sector. Second, please ensure that majority or bulk of the work you do is in one of or more of those social development sectors, right? And the third thing we did was, at least initially, we said that certain organizations we will keep out of the social stock exchange because we want it to be more inclusive and we want it to be more democratized, right? So what we did is we said that based on Schedule 7 of Section 135, based on the SDG goals, based on Niti Aayog priority areas, and some of the inputs we received from the ecosystem, we came up with a list of 15 sectors. They have the usual suspects of health, education, skilling, environment, etc. And we said, so you have to be working in one or more of those 15 areas. Second is that you have to be doing 2/3 of your business, which means your revenue, if you're a for-profit enterprise, your expenses or beneficiary, if you're not for-profit enterprise, has to be from those areas. The third filter that I spoke about is that we left out organizations that have political or religious affiliations. We left out organizations that are corporate foundations, which receive a bulk of their funding from their parent corporate. We left out trade bodies and professional bodies because they typically have a source of revenues through their members. And we left out housing companies except for those working in affordable housing. Right? So initially, we left out these segments. And at some point, at the right moment, we will probably start including some of them, if not all of them. Now that you've demonstrated that you are a social enterprise, the next is that, let's say you're a not-for-profit organization. Right? A not-for-profit organization, by its nature, raises funds at a project or program level, which means that the entity will actually come to raise funds multiple times to the social stock exchange. You know, a typical stock exchange, you do an IPO, you do it once for the organization. So we deliberately broke the NGO part into 2 steps. You register the organization first. You give us your 12A, TG, MOA, etc. Once that is done successfully, now you can fundraise as many times as you want. Okay. The next question you'll ask me, Bhomik, is how do you do fundraising? So the first thing we did is, listen, there's already the donation and grant structure, which is working very well. Let's first bridge that over to the stock exchange. The stock exchange does not have the concept of a donation or grant. So we created a new instrument called zero coupon, zero principal instrument, which is nothing but a donation or a grant, which is now can be on a stock exchange. Okay. In addition, what we did is, so one method of raising funds is, of course, the donation or grant, now through the zero coupon, zero principal instrument. But to me, the more exciting part of the stock exchange is the ability to do more collaborative and hybrid structures. So as an example, the conversation that I'm having with Mr. Tiwari and NSDC is that, can we actually pull together multiple types of donors and investors to create a construct which actually has a much greater impact. So there is this concept of a skilled impact bond or a social development bond that we are working. Yes. Right? So as a for-profit enterprise, you come in and you actually can raise money the regular way, which is through an IPO or through a debt instrument. But to me, the more exciting, my future vision of the social stock exchange is actually where for-profit and not-for-profit enterprises come together and create a far greater impact than they individually would have, which is today not possible in the offline world. But the stock exchange enables that to happen, right? So a not-for-profit can use the social stock exchange to use zero coupon, zero principal to raise funds. A for-profit can go the IPO route, can go the debt route, but now they can also combine forces, join forces, and do more exciting collaborative fundraising on the social stock exchange that could not have been possible earlier. Yeah.
So as of today, where do we stand on social stock exchange? Like where we have reached in terms of entire modalities and operationalization of this SSE model? And where do we see this going in next 1 year or 2 years, and practically seeing that organizations have started raising fund through the SSE model?
Okay, so the regulations and notifications that enabled the social stock exchange started coming out in July of last year. Okay, I think the latest one that came out was sometime in October regarding the governing council for the stock exchange. And we at BSC had applied early enough in August itself. By December, we got the approval to launch the social stock exchange. And we started onboarding NGOs. We have received 12 registrations so far. And most of those 12 conversations with regard to fundraising. We've also been talking to several for-profit enterprises. In fact, I was at a meeting yesterday with one of them, who are also very keen to come on to the social stock exchange and start raising funds through the IPO or the debt route. Equally exciting is the conversation that I'm having with NSDC with regard to social impact bonds and zero coupon, zero principal instruments, through which I think a lot of players in the skilling ecosystem will be able to come together and do a joint fundraise, which will have a far larger impact. Like I said in answering your earlier question, Bhomik, to my mind, the future of the social stock exchange lies in the social impact funds, the social development bonds, and there are conversations that are happening there also. And I'm very delighted to tell you that the Chartered Accountant Institute is also very interested in participating in this. And so we've been having a lot of conversation with them around, because some of these structures are very new, right? And most people are not aware of these. So part of the process is also to build awareness and build the processes that will be required to enable these instruments. Yeah.
Now I'm coming to more pragmatic question, which comes from the sector itself, right? There's a lot of trust factor issue when we talk about social sector, non-profit ecosystem, and even at some point in time, social enterprise ecosystem as well. So how does this SSE model really bridge that trust gap or trust deficit which we have between potential funder, and the organizations which are implementing projects on ground? And how do India's non-profit ecosystem is really going to learn a lot or leverage a lot in terms of documentation, reporting, and compliances, which technically is going to strengthen their entire governance system as well? How do you see SSE playing that role and making the entire system more robust?
So, Bhomik, you might remember in one of our earliest meetings in 2017, I believe it was, one of the things we discussed at that point had been the fact that there are very few standards that exist in the social development ecosystem. And at that point, there were several NGOs that I met who actually wanted to stay away from corporate donors, especially because the compliance burden, because everybody wanted their own formatted reports at their own frequency, and they had ad hoc requirements like, tomorrow's my board meeting, can you give me a report today? And therefore, there was a fair amount of admin burden that the NGOs have to bear to comply with all this. The second thing, so that this is from the NGO side. From the donor side, oftentimes there was a lack of transparency into what's happening with their funds. So they actually had to send teams to the ground, right? If they're doing a project which is remote from their home base, then it involved an expense and an effort to figure out, or you have to rely on what the NGO is telling you, which in some instances, and like they say, there's old English adage, bad news travels much faster than good news, right? So it was always the bad news that made the headlines. It was never the people. So therefore, all of this together built a huge trust deficit. And one of the things that I had tried to do in my Saman days actually was to create a technology platform that tried to automate this whole project monitoring and reporting and bring some standardization to it. I think the SSC takes it to the next level, social stock exchange, and it does it through a variety of means. One is that because it's a segment in the stock exchange and not an independent, completely separate stock exchange, it actually inherits a lot of the compliance and governance that goes into being on a stock exchange, which means that there are quarterly reports, there are annual reports, right? There are the disclosures that you have to make, right? Which provides visibility to the donor as to what's happening inside your organization. The second is that to those disclosures, we've also now added impact-related disclosures, right? So if you have raised funds and you have events that are happening that will have a significant impact on the outcome of the project, then those disclosures also have to be made within 7 days of the event happening. Okay, and the third thing that we have done is introduce the concept of a social auditor, right? And along with it, the standardization of audit principles, a code of conduct for the social auditors to follow, right? So the social audit standards and the auditor code of conduct, the certification process, will ensure that now the donor has an independent third party who's happening on the ground and is able to, on a unbiased basis, tell the donor what's happening on the ground. So I think these three things put together will hopefully bridge that trust deficit that you talked about. Right? However, remember that these are relevant only for the social stock exchange. And I'm hoping that once we are able to demonstrate that these work, then the larger, like the CSR donors and philanthropists, etc., will also adopt these as standards. And that will be the true test of the pudding.
Right. So as you have brought in CSR, so I'll jump to CSR part of the this talk. We know that India is getting almost 25,000 to 26,000 crore annually through CSR funding from the companies or corporates. But a larger pie of or larger section of the pie goes to health and education program, which is almost 52 to 55% every year. Do you see that probably social stock exchange model is really going to create that equitable funding for other causes, be it environment, be it skilling, or be it any other area which probably requires more funding, but maybe because of tangibility aspect or because of other aspects, they were not attracting the desired funding. So do you think that SS is probably going to create that kind of canvas or landscape for those causes to really get funding through SSC model?
What the SSC will do, Bhomik, is to create a level playing field. Okay, it will create a platform on which people who are working on tribal culture will get an equal place as an NGO that's working on education or health. Okay? What it will do is that it will allow NGOs that are working in remote areas to be able to demonstrate the impact that they're creating through the social audit process without having people to visit their donors, to visit their localities and their beneficiaries. What it will do is it will allow people who perhaps as donors have not found the sectors in which they were passionate about donating to or creating an impact in, and therefore had to default to sectors like education and health, which are perceived as safe sectors to donate in, right? Which of course are also needed. What it will allow the social stock exchange is to give those donors access to projects and programs that are happening in areas that they're passionate about and geographies that they're passionate about. So therefore, the social stock exchange will definitely act as an enabler, providing a level playing field for other sectors also. Ultimately, of course, it will depend on organizations, and if they're able to demonstrate impactful work that they're doing in these other sectors, and donors who have to show interest in putting in money into these sectors. But definitely, the social stock exchange will be a huge enabler for these other sectors also to come to the front.
Okay. Yeah, I think this is a new aspect which even I'm learning, that the equitable funding opportunities both from the geographical lens as well as thematic lens. Because we see that when we look at CSR pie, a larger pie goes to 4 to 5 states and 2 to 3 thematic areas. So definitely, I also see this as a good opportunity for the non-profits and social enterprises operating in remote areas or geographies which are technically neglected from the funders' perspective. I'll again shift back to Mr. Ved now to talk about and or to learn about skills ecosystem in India and outside India. So, Mr. Ved, NSDC is leading the change of youth employability. How do you see that NSDC is now foraying into international geographies to replicate the successful model that we have in India for youth skilling and working with industries based on demand and supply requirement across the sectors or industries? So, where is NSDC's focus now in terms of international opportunities, and how we can take that leadership position in certain markets that we have the models, we have the capacities, and we can do it. So are there talks of joint venture? Are there some other models which you are exploring in other countries?
If we, I would like to give credit to the government of India, because there's a lot of focus now on uh, preparing the international opportunity for Indian youth, because this realization is there that we have a demographic dividend, and this is the time for the country to reap the benefit out of that. Uh, the the whole of government approach, the Ministry of External Affairs and Ministry of Skill Development are working very closely. We are also working very closely with Ministry of Commerce. So over last about 7-8 months, we have signed mobility and migration partnerships with about 13 countries. And for the first time, there's a government to government channel being created for the youth mobility. In these mobility partnerships, the usual construct is that one, there is a focus on harmonization of standards. As Mr. Gupta was talking about, that the sector has been suffering because of the lack of standards. So we have done a lot of work over last 1 decade, and the one great focus here is that how do you do the harmonization of skill standards across the countries. The other factor is that we are also working with the governments, and our missions abroad are also helping NSDC in this, because NSDC is a nodal agency for these mobility channels. So the demand will be consolidated by those countries and will be passed on through Ministry of External Affairs and Ministry of Skill Development to NSDC. And NSDC is setting up the training centers in India, which are called Skill India International Centers. Our Honorable Finance Minister announced in the budget that the 30 Skill India International Centers will be set up. These so now probably every state will have one center where any youth can go who's desirous and aspiring to be a participant in the global talent pipeline. And this center will provide end-to-end support to an individual. The counseling will be provided, where the assessment and the opportunities will be presented to any individual. Skill gap analysis will be performed there, and depending upon the skill gap, the individual will be provided the bridge training to go abroad. And we are also bringing lots of international assessment bodies and training providers. NSCC has recently signed partnerships with Cambridge for English language. We have signed for OET for healthcare English language. We are partnering Goethe for German language. A lot of focus is coming on language, because that's an important determinant of your success abroad. Skill India international centers across the country will also provide support to individuals to give full information about the employer and the job opportunities, their rights, their benefits, and also the full migration support, including the help in visa and ticketing and everything. So it's a trusted channel emerging, where the individuals will be able to get full opportunity. So we have also built a digital platform, as Mr. Gupta was talking about, that our digital platform is providing an opportunity for digitally verifiable credential. Any employer sitting anywhere in the world can post their jobs. Our youth can post their resumes There is a AI-based matching engine which can do a matching of resumes with the employment opportunity. There are then there a conversation starts on a CRM through WhatsApp and other methods, and the both remote and on-prem interviews are being organized. And last year we did about 21,000 people followed NSDC's trusted channel to get opportunities abroad, and we are working on a much higher targets this year. So what I would say is that this is a whole of government approach coming up. The Ministry of External Affairs, our missions abroad, Ministry of Commerce, all our free trade agreements, our mobility partnership agreements that is happening, the funding of Skill India International Centers by Ministry of Skill Development, continuous guidance by PMO and other ministries. So I see this as a whole of India's uh, mission to open up opportunities for Indian youth abroad.
You spoke about ESG in our previous conversation a few minutes back. I'll bring that back into the picture and conversation that we know that India's businesses, or I would say across the world, businesses are transitioning to sustainable business practices, which ultimately brings back the idea of green jobs and green jobs opportunities in the market. So how is NSDC gearing up for this green jobs market, and what are the various modalities or practices that you are looking at? You will incorporate, or you will work with the industries or skill sector to really help businesses in transition to green jobs and becoming more sustainable to achieve net zero as well as to move ahead on ESG principles.
So as you would know that our own commitment at the COP21 are very India's perhaps taken the most ambitious targets on energy transition. So we are conscious of this that one, the emerging renewable energy segment needs large workforce, and also there is a need for just transition because the fossil fuel which will go down in times to come. The people large number of workforce who's employed there needs to be reskilled. So we are in that context we have established dialogues with almost the many countries. We are talking to International Energy Agency. We are talking to some of the research groups in Sweden and Norway to uh, bring the skills requirement which globally is emerging. We are talking to International Solar Alliance, etc. These are all an effort in the direction that one, India's our own domestic needs are very high, but post Ukraine situation, the world is will be moving very fast towards the even the gas is no more a transition option. People have to move to renewable very fast. So that is one area. But we also believe that the ESG is all about building socially responsible businesses. And at least in E or S side, the NSDC can play a very important role because now every business, that means every job role in a business, would have to have a climate consciousness. So climate consciousness becomes an important skill to be embedded into every individual. And similarly, on the social side, whether it's a livelihood project or inclusion I personally believe that the ESG theme is very deep skilling theme, and that would attract a lot of attention from across the globe. And just I told you earlier also that the way the world is, India is attracting the largest share of the venture capital from across the world. Same way, we will also become the natural pool for deployment of ESG funds available with the global corporates, because we know that what is happening around us in terms of whether it's a human rights issue or climate insensitivity all across the globe, or war-like situations. And India is perhaps the best place to deploy your ESG obligations and the ESG story that this has become so important. I would suggest that even access to growth capital would be determined in times to come by your ESG score. and that is why it's very important for all of us to bring that consciousness, and we are working on that.
Great. Now I'll bring back the social stock exchange in the picture and conversation. So Ved sir, NSDC has already been listed on social stock exchange. How do you see this will create a pathway for entrepreneurs who are in skills ecosystem in terms of access to funding or collaborative opportunities available?
So, as Mr. Gupta was earlier talking about the skill impact bond, this is the first effort that NSCC did is attracting global impact capital. And this was our first effort, but the way the impact skill impact bond program has been managed by NSDC, the donors are extremely happy, and we are getting a lot of good points from donors the way the program has been run. I believe that the social stock exchange is the right instrument to scale this effort, because instead of going donor to donor, we what NSDC would like to focus on is that bring quality projects to social stock exchange, and which are both trustworthy and which are investable. As Mr. Gupta was talking, that there is a whole issue of trust from the donor side, whether my money is being utilized or not effectively. We have focused a lot on building trust through digital methods. NSDC has a very robust digital platform where we have we have close to managed $1 billion of government funding in government programs, where everything is traceable and verifiable. And over last 1.5 years, and we have made the platform more consumer centric, kind of a the learner centric, and that's where the voice has now gone back to the learners. It's not even a question of whether the reporting, whether the implementation agency is reporting or not. We have started directly connecting with the learners through the our Skill India digital app, and also through our social media channels. So I'm very confident that this digital platform with its digitally verifiable credentials today, NSDC's platform provide an opportunity for you for any donor to verify any candidate, because we have access to sovereign databases in form of the biometric and demographic credentialing through Aadhaar. We also have integrated with education ecosystem, so education registry or skills, we issue all certificates digitally. So any donor can verify at individual level who has been participant of any program. So this is why I believe that it will allow opportunity to everybody who is in the skill ecosystem to, first of all, they can come and post their projects to NSDC or participate as an implementation partner and of NSDC in any project that various projects that NSDC will bring to the impact market. And once we take it to the social stock exchange, the donors and the corporates who have CSR obligations will have the transparent opportunity to invest in such projects.
Thank you, Ved sir. I'll again move to Mr. Hemant Gupta in terms of we all know that there has been a revolutionary change in the way individuals start giving funding for social causes across the globe. How do you see that socialist stock exchange model in India will really put India at the center stage of this entire social impact ecosystem, where the world is looking at that how this modality is going to evolve and benefit non-profits and social enterprises, and there will be a reliability factor on the impact at the end, where the funding is going. So where do we see this SSE model really helping in setting that narrative?
So, Bhomik, I had, in answer to your first question, spoken about the fact that social stock exchange experiment has been tried in several other countries with limited success. And wherever it has been successful, it has primarily been where for-profit enterprises were coming to the stock exchange rather than not-for-profit enterprises. That's point number one. Point number two is that one of the core principles behind which we've architected the social stock exchange has been around transparency. Okay, and therefore impact and transparency, obviously, since you're not focusing on financial return, but you're focusing on social return. Transparency, a lot of it is about the social return or the impact that your funds are creating. So that's point number 2. Point number 3 is that while we have the zero coupon, zero principal instrument, which is a bridge bringing the donation and grant methodology to the stock exchange. But we are also actively promoting what we believe are the more scalable and sustainable methods of fundraising on the social stock exchange, which is primarily through collaborative instruments like the skill impact bond that Mr. Tiwari was talking about, social impact funds, where we got SEBI to modify it to be more inclusive and more accessible by investors and donors. And this, what to my mind, what the stock exchange does is that just like there's a skill impact bond today, if tomorrow there is an even more innovative structured financial instrument for social development, the stock exchange enables that to happen. It enables that to get publicized, and it enables that to get subscribed. Equally importantly, it also enables the successful ones to be showcased and the unsuccessful ones to be weeded out, right? So, to my mind, a combination of these things, right, will actually help the social stock exchange succeed in India and will therefore set an example for the rest of the world to follow. Because ESG, which is the buzzword today, has S right in the middle, right? And of course, the environment is also. But the focus. So, if think about it this way, today you talk about greenwashing, right? You talk about all these things that are starting to come out of the woodwork as far as ESG is concerned. Right? Things were good so far, but slowly malpractices, slowly issues with the way ESG is getting measured and benchmarked are coming out. If you had a common platform which provided transparencies into the outcomes, which was able to get everybody into the story and not, right, which made ESG central to everybody's life, right, and which promoted best practices and provided enough transparency for the bad practices to be get weeded out. Wouldn't that be something that would be your vision of the future? And remember what I said, the third point I made, it includes innovation, because financing, especially in these new age areas, is about being able to innovate on how you raise funds. And which includes innovation in terms of financing. I think it's something that we should all be proud of 3 years down the road on what we've built. And I'm really, really glad that NSDC is actually playing a leading role in terms of having some of those conversations. Yeah.
This is the last question for Ved, sir. Okay. In terms of, if you have to give a message to India's CSR fraternity in terms of how investing in skilling gives better social return than any other segment, if we have to really look at social return, what would be that message for India's CSR decision makers?
So my message to India's CSR fraternity would be that the next decade and probably next 2.5 decades belong to India. And the story of India getting its glory back will be through skill ecosystem. Here is an opportunity for you to come and participate in this journey. And NSDC, and I have the support of Mr. Hemant Gupta, the Social Stock Exchange. Together, we will ensure that there is a trusted system for skilling, both in terms of all the 3 Ps: people, public, that means government, and the private sector. And when all these three P's come together, the fourth P, the planet becomes a better place to live in, and India will be the dominant force on this planet. So that's the hope, and that's the message that I want to give to everyone.
So thanks a lot. It has been an insightful conversation, and it will really help our social sector and social enterprise audience to learn a lot and understand that how they can make certain decisions and their processes robust to get in sync with SSC requirement as well as being a part of India's growth story. So thanks a lot for joining us. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, and thank you so much, Gupta sir.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bhomik, we need CSRBOX to be a part of this story, okay?
Yeah.
Sure, sir. We are all there for the support and be part of this journey. Thank you very much.
Sure.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot.